So I was sitting this morning and I was, just having flashbacks of sitting across the hall, which is a smaller room now, with Katagiri Roshi, and I was so young. um, and also I was having flashbacks of um, Tomoy's son, Katagiri's widow, was a good friend of mine. So that's kind of wonderful. Um, I'm going to start with a poem by Wendell Berry, who's actually one of my favorites. I have a lot of favorites, but he's one of my favorites. This is a poem that I first heard from Nonan Chowaney, who is no longer with us. He's a Zen teacher from Nebraska. The law that marries all things. The cloud is free only to go with the wind. The rain is free only in falling. The water is free only in its gathering together, in its downward courses, in its rising into air. In law is rest, if you love the law, if you enter singing into it, as water in its descent. Or song is truest law, and you must enter singing. It has no other entrance. It is the great chorus of parts. The only outlawry is in division. Whatever is singing is found, awaiting the return of whatever is lost. Meet us in the air over the water, sing the swallows. Meet me, the redbird sings. Here, 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 here. In 2002, I had one of those calendars where you pull off a page and it has a quote. It was a Zen calendar. And one day I read this quote: "In singing and dancing is the voice of the law." Hakuin, Zen master. I thought to myself, wow, Hakuin must be really cool. How did a Japanese patriarch know that? When I left for a cabin in Wisconsin on a tributary of the St. Croix River for a solo 3-month retreat in January of 2002, I took that page and I pasted it on my journal where it still resides on the front, the cover. I was so surprised last year when I saw that Busho had written a book with that as the title, my favorite quote. I had read Wild Ivy, which is an autobiography, a spiritual autobiography of Zen Master Hakuin. So I knew that he was wild and intense. But how did he know about singing and dancing? In the 1970s, I heard Katagiri Roshi say, "Time and space are same." And I thought, how does he know that? I knew these things, that singing and dancing were the voice of the law, and that time and space are the same, because I'm a dancer, investigating movement and its sources deeply, and a singer who liked and likes to explore the far reaches of sound and body. Time and space being the same thing is something in my body and the body of all dancers. We experience this because time and space are the stuff of dancing and choreography. And we know this, we understand this without words, without any intellectual, conceptual over talking. So in singing and dancing is the voice of the law. What is this law that he's talking about? This is the law of non-separation. Even though our senses tell us that there are objects, senses separate from us. I'm here and you are there. Without you there, there can be no person here. I am because you are. Hakuin wrote a very long letter. It's 27 pages on my computer. So I'm trying to imagine this in calligraphy. He wrote a letter to a Nichiren nun in 1747 because she heard him talk. She let him know she didn't understand what he was saying. And he was just so abundant in his response. Oh my God. So he wrote her this long, long, long letter. Here's a little bit. When this ultimate is reached, all sentient beings and all Tathagata of the three periods, mountains, rivers, the great earth, and the Lotus Sutra itself, all seek the Dharma principle that all things are a non-dual unity, representing the true appearance of all things. This is the fundamental principle of Buddhism. So this path that allows us to know in our bones, to know this thing that Hakuin sent to the nun in our bones, is not intellectual. Hi, Jerry. It's a direct knowing. So I'm going to say that again because it's so important. This path that allows us to know in our bones is not intellectual. It's a direct knowing. It requires a natural shift that takes place in our cells, in our bones. So we have that habit of focusing our senses and desires outward to attain things, to get things done. I have a long list on my kitchen table. Only one check is next to it. This way of living in which we are all trained can shift. Our kinesthetic tone can drop back and down. Seeing is happening. Hearing is happening. Breathing is happening. Knowing is happening. It's all happening, but it's not us. So Wendell Berry in that poem wrote, "The cloud is free only to go with the wind. The rain is free only in falling. In law is rest." I love that line. In law is rest. In Zazen, we rest. We might not feel like we're resting. Our conditioning sets us up to do everything in the world, but not to rest in this way. That is to rest in harmony with the law. The law and its reality challenges our conditioning, which is not something bad. Like our conditioning is not something bad. We need conditioning to build the Zendo. It sets us up to do everything in the world, but not to rest. The law and its reality challenges our conditioning and how we perceive everything. But singing and dancing, wouldn't we like to sing and to dance as natural and normal instead of only as special, unusual, I don't dance. Maybe just a glimpse. In the 70s, I taught kids in a dance company all over Minnesota. It was funded by the Bush Foundation. So we called them the Bush Tours because we went into the bush. But we went all over the state. And we taught time, space, and energy. And we taught this in small towns like Appleton, Minnesota, and Wabasso. In Wabasso, it was decided that I was a witch because someone caught me meditating in the equipment room in the gym. I told them, oh, what's the name of that TV show, you know, with the grasshopper, Kung Fu. I told them, no, it's just like Kung Fu. I'm not a witch. In their gyms, we taught them that they have access, actually, that they are the aliveness of time, that they are space, that they are energy. We taught them that they can experience the truth of that for themselves. We taught them that this freedom is their birthright, is their actual construction. So I used to tell myself, as I tried to get the 7th graders in the gym to listen to me, I am planting seeds for the future. Someday they'll take a physics class and they'll suddenly realize, oh, that's what that dancing lady was telling us back in the gym in 7th grade. That was my hope. Wendell Berry says, the rain is free only in falling. There is a law on earth that regulates all movement, and this is the law of gravity. Going with gravity creates suspension and momentum in space. Embodying this requires a long study and consistent practice. It requires that all muscle spindles in the body align in the direction of our physical, mental, and emotional intention. It takes time and repetition, just like Zazen. And we enter this practice of aligning with gravity, singing. So to enter it singing, I think it means that it's already operative. It's operating right now, otherwise we'd be floating around on the ceiling. Before we begin to move, it's already operating. And there's no separation of effort, of its function, and of this body-mind. Does that make sense? Kind of? So here's what Steve Paxton, who sadly died this year, he was 80, incredible genius. And he was the founder of contact improvisation. Has anyone ever heard of that? Yeah? Yes. You're smiling, right? Why are you smiling?
I go to dance church.
Oh yeah, dance church. Yeah. You took. Yeah, they do that there. And she's smiling because it's joyful. So he died at 80, and he has a book that's called Gravity. I had to order it from Belgium. I mean, it was a deal, buy this book. So he has this little book, and he said, gravity's effect on all our tissues, on the very water in our cells, suggests to me that it can be thought of as a complex array of events, which in combination produce a general sense of me, moving or still. After a few of these events, even mentally or emotionally, and then the qualities of the relation to gravity will change as well. So I thought, boy, that sounds a lot like a description of the aggregates contained in the Heart Sutra. All these events, these non-contiguous moments that shine, which are complete, they come together, they aggregate and produce a sense of me. But that so-called me is constantly being moved by gravity, by this force. So it can't really be found exactly. It's not stable in the least. And it's expressing the non-dual unity continuously, right? So Wendell Berry says, water is free only in its gathering together, in its downward courses, in its rising into air. So then Hakuin continues his discourse to the old Nichiren nun, and he writes, to be more specific, look at calligraphy and painting. Or better, when someone says that so-and-so has a genius for performing on the biwa or the koto. Do you know what those are? Koto? Those are traditional Japanese string instruments. If we ask just where that genius lies, nobody, no matter how eloquent or gifted of tongue he may be, will ever be able to explain it in words. We cannot teach this uninherited talent to the child that we cherish. But when this mysterious spot is touched on, it operates unconsciously, emerging from some unknown place, aka the great spring in Zen. The mysterious nature of the mind with which all people are endowed is like this. When the time comes for it to bloom, it sets forth beautiful blossoms. The wondrous law of the Buddha mind is neither sullied, nor does it decrease within sentient beings, and it is neither made pure or does it increase within a Buddha. In the Buddha, in the common man or woman, among sentient beings, it is in no way different. So he's exhorting her and encouraging her. I'm just like amazed. He's writing a letter to one person, an old person like me. And he's not holding back. He's just like really trying to encourage her. I just think that's so beautiful. Dancing is always happening. It's naturally the voice of reality. Dancing is happening right now as we sit in our seats. And we are not dancing. Dancing is dancing. You understand? So now I'm going to talk about singing. The entrance into the law and the expression of it really is this way, as Wendell Berry told us. Or song is truest law, and you must enter singing. It has no other entrance. It is the great chorus of parts. The only outlawry is in division. It just makes me think that the last time I saw Rosemary was after Ado, Phoebe, and I had sung in a big chorus last spring. And Rosemary kindly came to hear us. Makes me smile. So I want to point from this sort of theoretical, poetic sounding stuff to actual singing. So there can be singing. If you've ever sung, which I'm assuming probably everybody sang sometime, there can be singing in which we are trying to sing. We're trying to sing. In this case, we trip over the self that has an idea of singing. The self that is trying to produce singing. Do you know that self? Yeah. This is not the voice of the law. That voice The voice of the law is already singing before singing is heard. There is entering singing, and then the door of singing opens, reveals itself. It doesn't matter if it's opera or blues or silence. The only outlawry is in division means when duality is primary. You are there, I am here, I am singing. There is something I'm singing about. That's division. And we know because it just feels effortful and boring. And we know, even though no one, we didn't read Hakuin, we know when singing is happening because we get high, whether we're doing it or we're listening to some incredible person do it, right? It kind of wakes up all these energies and it makes us happy. Once I got to hear Jessie Norman. Do you know Jessie Norman? She was this freaking incredible opera singer. I mean, as a human and as a singer, she was there. So I went to the Ordway. I was sitting on the first floor and I was right next to the wall. And she came out. I'll never forget this. Her pianist was tiny, smaller than me, like tiny. And she's like 2 airplane seats and gorgeous. So she comes out at the Ordway, and before she does anything, she silently greets the audience, like takes 2 full minutes. And by that time, everyone's like, whoa, I'm in the heavenly realm. And then she nods, and then into that space, singing happens. I was just like, the whole time, trying not to make any noise. And the guy sitting next to me at the intermission said, "So you really like that?" And I said, "Yeah, I really like it." And I was, gosh, I hope you're in the same realm I am. And when we left the orchestra, the hall, there was a policeman. Where we were crossing the sidewalk, there was a police car, and everyone was like, and he said, what are you all having? I think I'll have some of that. And I said, you definitely want some of that. So one time I heard Jean Redpath sing the Song of the Seals at Orchestra Hall. Does anyone know Jean Redpath? Yeah, incredible woman. She's a famous Scottish traditional singer. She sang a song about the myth of the Selkies. So the Selkies, in case you don't know, are mythological beings, seals, who are capable of changing from seal to human form by shedding their skin. So there's all these stories, Scotland. As she sang, her physical form took on the form of the ocean for me off the coast of Scotland. She was no longer solid. She wasn't singing about something. There was no Jean Redpath. There was no song. There was only the great chorus of parts. There was just the voice of the law. So I have a practice myself of offering voice healings. I did through Pathways, which is a complementary healing organization. It used to be located just down on Hennepin there. So this practice developed for me in the 1980s because I was studying experiential anatomy and I was practicing vocal improv based on embodied anatomy. Sometimes a voice student would come from a lesson and they'd be a mess. And I'd say, why don't you just lie down? I'll sing over you. So they would lie down on a quilt on my floor and I would improvise over them. Gradually, it became more clear what I was doing. And I have been improvising, singing for healing now for maybe 30 years. I volunteered at Pathways. And now I'm doing it on Zoom. Because they don't have a building and COVID. I didn't think I could do it on Zoom. I thought, how can I feel anything crazy? Do it on Zoom. So this singing is about dropping backward and down, not forward and up. Awareness follows the sound and it follows the movement of attention. So it's like zazen. And without a particular goal other than enter singing. And the voice of the law arrives in each moment, unstable, non-separate, free. And I have to say, to my amazement, people feel better. That's what they've reported. Oh, I feel more relaxed. Oh, I got warm in this place in my back, so we compare notes afterwards. What did you notice? It's very interesting, very amazing to me. So Wendell Berry says, whatever is singing is found, awaiting the return of whatever is lost. Gosh, that just now saying that again reminds me of Amazing Grace. The song Amazing Grace. Oh, all these beings are connected to the same thing, I'm guessing. Yeah. So Hakuin says, so when the Buddha spoke of the Dharma being as numerous as the sands in the Ganges, he referred to nothing that was brought in from the outside. In other words, I'll do this, then I'll become that, and then I'll be this other thing. That's not what the Buddha was saying. In terms of the common person, he spoke of the appearance of Buddha nature itself, with which all are without a doubt endowed. In terms of sentient beings, once the vow to become a Buddha has been made, the wondrous law of the one mind does not increase or lessen one bit. So when we practice Zazen, we align with Buddha nature. We align with the law. And that alignment is what does the work as we learn to allow it to unfold within us. Then we find what is singing, what is dancing, and we receive whatever has been lost. And we're just going to end with one story. So when I was on that retreat that I mentioned, 3 months in the woods in Wisconsin in the winter, at one point I needed some parsley. I think it was getting to be March. And so I drove to a grocery store in a little town. And I found my parsley and I was waiting in line to check out and handed her my parsley. And the checkout lady, she was probably younger than I was at that time. I was like 52. But she looked very, very, very like hard. And so I'm just aware, I'm just noticing this. And I'm handing her my parsley. And then, so I paid my parsley. And then she looked up and said, have a good weekend. I mean, that's all she said. But light was coming out of her eyes so much that I almost fell into the gum behind me. I was just like, what's happening? This is what's happening. This is what's happening. It's everywhere. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for listening. And I'd be delighted to hear what you have to say or what you want to talk about. Oh, I'm gonna just throw stuff. Yes, hi.
Hi. Thank you.
Yeah.
I really, but the one thing that I really struck me was the difference between knowing and wisdom that you talked about. And it made me think of an experience that we had when I was in my 20s. I read a book, many people probably know it, Siddhartha by Habermas-Scher. And when I read it the first time I read it, because I think I was told that you're supposed to read that book if you're someone who's wanting to find out about the world and things. And I read it at the time, and I don't think I kind of liked it, but I didn't really get it. And so then many things happened. I got married, had kids, got a job, suffered, and I recently reread it, and it finally spoke to me. And I think the reason was because I had gained wisdom, like the words themselves when I was younger didn't speak to me. But after I had embodied all of those experiences, those are things that happened to me, but they also happened to me somatically. And so I think it was just I really enjoyed the book. The second time around, every single sentence was popping off.
Wow.
Like that light you were talking about coming out of someone's eyes. And so it was just a very powerful experience for me, and something that I thought of as you were talking. So thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah.
Thank you for talking about bringing our practice into the body. I feel like that's something I've been wanting to learn more about. When you were talking about the singing that exists and tapping into that. We did a workshop with Larry Ward and Peggy, and as students of Thich Nhat Hanh, they felt that Westerners need relaxation, that we're too uptight, and so they had nap time. And we all laid out and relaxed, and Larry started singing to us.
Oh my God.
And it was the most wonderful experience I've ever had. It moved me to tears.
Oh.
And I think that was that tapping into the singing that exists.
Yes. I'm gonna look over here in a second. Yes.
So talking, I really thank you very much for speaking today. I'm really interested in kind of how our body becomes even yet another organ as far as learning things. So we take things in through reading or through an experience. Excuse me, and it just kind of seeped into our bones. When we express, or when we express what we have internalized and has become part of us, do we have any control over how that expresses? Like when we practice, for instance, your dancing or for Zen practice, you can kind of control how your body moves and joints articulate, etc. But I'm just wondering how, when that sinew expresses itself, your matter of your bones expresses itself, where does our practice come into play then? Are we just victims of what comes out of us at that point? Or what kind of control do you might think we have?
We have this much, but we do have choice. And the choice is aligned with our vows. And we practice the choice. It's not about getting it right. We practice that choice in alignment with our vows over and over. So when I came to Zen, it didn't seem weird that you had to keep doing it, because I had to keep going to class for 100 million years, no matter how I felt. So that made sense that you would have to do that then, no matter how you felt. So you have a choice. Some choice. We can't control many, many things. Some choice in how we respond. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi. Oh wait, just hold on one second. I gotta turn this way and then I'll come back. Yes,
I loved your talk, so thank you very much for that. And, years ago, I attended a retreat at Brighton Bush, and I was a guest teacher from Portland, and he started every session with dancing. And I thought, this is weird. And I was not the only one, so we would just talk one day, you're all like, it's just kind of weird and uncomfortable, and like, it was completely out of my realm of what I thought it would be. But by the end of the week, it was just transformational, and it ended up being my favorite part of the day. It's just beautiful and freeing, and my question to you is, how do you do more of that? Like, how do you let yourself, like, I just feel like our society does not encourage us to be let go and dance like nobody's watching, and you know, I just wonder, how do you encourage that in your, in your practice, in your life?
So the upper Midwest is particularly prone to not enjoying that. Because I've been in other parts of the country where it's a little different, just to say. And, you know, I can't help it. So, I just have to, but you could go to dance church, which is gonna start in 15 minutes. It's at Tapestry at 37th and Minnehaha from like 11 to 1 on Sundays. It's like $5 donation. It's a little wild if you want to get really wild. Sometimes if I haven't been able to move enough in a week, I just go in. I have a special back corner that I like to be. But how do I not? I know for me, it's like that. For me, it's. I hope that's okay. Okay. Yes.
It sounds like singing for you has become a part of your meditation practice. And your talk made me think about how when I was a little kid, I could belt out a song in front of all these people like no problem,
Yes.
easy,
Yeah.
maybe too much to people's annoyance. But then somewhere along the way, I don't know, my ego or something got so big, and now the prospect of singing in front of all these people is terrifying. So over the course of your life, do you feel that singing has changed your relationship to this ego, or is that the wrong word? I don't know if that makes sense.
I would say it's all a practice. I hate to say that, you know, like, oh darn, no silver bullet. It's all a practice. And so I just bring the attention that I bring to Zazen if I'm singing, and then I'm just aware if that grasping is starting to happen, and then kindness, like, oh, what's happening here? What's needed? Because it feels yucky in my body when there's that grasping. It's like, ugh, I don't want to sing like that.
Good answer.
Yeah. Jerry.
So I was trying to talk about the friend who I saw last night, who is a trained actor, and one teacher she had in the first class asked people to simply be. And that acting is not an overlay of some character, but it is actually being perhaps in that character.
Yeah.
It's very similar to what you were describing in other works. But what I really want to respond to your question and your comment about dance. I was recently at a week-long dance camp outside of Madison, Wisconsin, which Lee Chao-Ping who teaches at the university and has a dance company, does this every summer. And she has not just professional dancers, but also community members like me who's had no training. And I love to move and gone over the various summers. And one exercise, not that she taught, but somebody else taught, was we were a small group lying on our backs in the studio. And we were simply to move in a way that felt true. That was the only instruction. And I went to dance camp with a lot of anxiety and trepidation because I've had one knee replaced, the other one is limping along, and had problems with them, I have arthritis in my hands and my wrists and so on, I'm thinking, and I realized how often I was saying, no, you can't do this because of that, no, you can't do that because of that, blah, blah, blah. Starting, the first gesture was to caress my right knee, that is still the natural knee. Caress the left knee, and then they started bending, and eventually I got up and walked and channeled a dear friend who used to dance, who was a dancer, and the primary thing was walking. And I channeled this dear friend, and I just did these different chapters. There was no control. There was, I mean, I was aware of choices, perhaps you want to call it that I was making. But that just trusting the next move. And awareness was part of this. So my own practice has definitely helped in this. It wasn't just, willy-nilly do anything. I was very aware of what body part I was touching or what was moving, what was bending, that kind of thing. And the person who was supposed to be witnessing was in tears. She was supposed to move as a response, and she couldn't help it. She just started blubbering and talking, telling me what happened. And I had no idea that this would happen, but I didn't have any particular control. I just paid attention to what moved next over 7 minutes. And to do this on one's own, it's as simple as if you have the sun coming through in the morning or the afternoon and you notice a shadow, you can play with that. And suddenly you've got 2 characters and your hands they'll make up all of these different moods and attitudes and characters and so on. It's just play. You can do it in the grass. You do it anywhere.
Thank you. Yeah. I think there was someone over here. Yes.
So I like dancing, I'm loving from Latin America, so I grew up dancing, and sometimes it's needed for me in my body. So like sometimes it's good, but I need to move too as a part of spiritual connection. And so I continue to look in ways to find dancing. So that's the first one that I do. I do silent disco on Friday. And that's why I'm 36. Parkway. And we started during the pandemic when we couldn't go indoors. So it was a 38 and Nicolette, and now we moved. And it's from 5 to 6 on Friday. You bring your own playlist of music. Sometimes we're 4, sometimes we're 17 people of all ages. And 5 to 6 we dance. And when you were sharing about the movement, if you start to think, oh, what are people thinking? How am I moving? Am I doing the right step? Then you don't enjoy. Then it's just like, like a show, I guess, like a performance. But when you really are feeling it and like are having fun with it, people enjoy it too, but like you enjoy it. And some people honk and clap or like they're happy. But the joy comes from within when you're just letting, just like doing what you feel like, and everybody moves wherever they want.
Thank you. Is there anyone on Zoom who has something to say? No. No, okay, thank you. So I think we're good.